Hello, and today we think about Corpus Christi, the most holy body and blood of Christ. I'm going to start by quoting a little something from the directions in the Missal, and this is a prayer which is said by the priest quietly to himself during the time of purification. It goes, after distributing communion, while the purification is taking place, the priest says quietly, "What has passed our lips as food, O Lord, may we possess in purity of heart, that what has been given to us in time may be our healing for eternity." Don't know about you, but frankly, I'm beginning to get a little bit fed up with all the constant talk about COVID-19. So rather than go on about that, let's go on about the holy body and blood of Christ, which frankly is far more interesting. For the body and blood of Christ is at the very heart of our Christian, our Catholic faith. Here we touch holy things, simple things too, a little bread, a sip of wine. Bread, our staple food, the source of life, the body of Christ. And wine, that which speaks of joy, of laughter, and is the lifeblood of Christ, joy and laughter. This simple human stuff in the Mass becomes the very stuff of God. And so day by day, week by week, God comes to us and we to him, and through these transformed, simple, day-to-day things, we get closer and ever closer to God and become more and more holy. Well, that's our prayer. But of course there are times when we find ourselves cut off from the precious body and blood of Christ. When we get cut off from this precious, holy food and drink. And indeed now such is a time, but it might be through illness or infirmity, or we may find ourselves through, say, work, having travelled to a foreign land where there are few priests and few churches. And so it's worth remembering that the sacraments are indeed God's channels of God's grace, but God's grace is not just limited to the 7 sacraments. God is bigger than that. God is bigger than the church. God is certainly bigger than the church's rules and regulations, and is certainly a lot bigger than canon law. But don't let the bishop hear that I've said that. It's good to remember, it's always good for us to remember that life itself is sacramental. And while a family meal is not the Mass, God can still be there if we let him in. And this brings me to that prayer which I quoted at the beginning of this little talk. Here we are, on earth, in time, pretty much trapped in 2 spatial dimensions. Forwards and backwards, left and right. Yes, there's a third one, up and down, but you can't go very far in that direction unless you've got a rocket. So we're trapped in space and time. And that's our earthly life. And into this, God's grace breaks through. It can come through Holy Writ. It can come through contemplating a holy image. But above all, it comes through the Holy Mass and communion. We are trapped in space and time. But God is not. God never is. And while the fragments we consume are small, their effect is enormous and lasts for all eternity. Amen.